And when you look at KD and you look at the way he operates and the way that he dresses and the way that he conducts himself, like that dude cares about one thing, and it's hooping. Like that's it. So
Yeah.
he's the one guy that if he did say that that was a basketball decision, that I believe him, because
Yeah.
that's really what's important to him. Like he don't even care about like combing his hair all the way. Like he just cares about basketball. That's it. Waves be damned. Like he just cares about hooping.
Yeah.
Let me put you on game.
Speaking of Draymond, he actually had an interview with KD. This is the first time I think we've seen Draymond interview anyone, and it was a really insightful interview in terms of you got a lot of insight into their relationship during their time with the Warriors and after. Then you also got a lot of insight into KD as a person and what he values and where his mindset is at this point in his career. So after watching the interview, what are some of your overall impressions and initial thoughts about it?
Um, it's interesting. I love seeing athletes venture into other forays in life, whether you're Dame Lillard, dropping albums, dropping dimes and bars, et cetera, et cetera. Guys like Serge Ibaka, buying up property and real estate and stuff like that. Kevin Love and DeMar DeRozan talking about mental health, or Draymond Green, getting in front of the mic and being an analyst, a commentator on TNT, and now being an interviewer. It's really dope to see and to show the dynamic range that these guys have. Needless to say, a LeBron James who has his foot in just about everything under the sun.
Yeah.
And so
wine, movies,
pizza, burgers, schools,
hair
philanthropy. Yes. And so, but overall, I think it was really introspective. I think the interview style was very open and honest, and I loved to see KD opening up in an interview. It's a side of him that I feel like we haven't been able to see, because he's been, I would say, marred in controversy since he decided to join the Warriors. Ever since then, he's been the villain of the NBA in a lot of ways. And his impact on the game has been substantial, but off the court, it's like people just are no longer fans of his. And to see him get the chance to really set the story from his perspective was really fascinating. Overall, I did think that he still is a little blind to the impact that he has, but at the same time, I understand where his thoughts are, and I can better relate to him and his feelings.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, same. I think KD is one of the most interesting players in the NBA, whether you want to talk about his actual game and how dominant he is, or you want to talk about his stature physically and how he does what he does at the size that he does it at, or just his off the court personality, whether it is leaving a place like Oklahoma City to go play for their rival in the midst of that rivalry, or his proclivity for getting into fights on Twitter. Like there's just so much going on with KD. So it's definitely interesting to see him being interviewed in this way, and to hear him peel back the curtain a little bit, or when he has his own podcast, The Boardroom. I've caught a couple episodes of that and hear him actually be able to tell his story from his side. But yeah, the interview was really interesting. I love how they dove into a lot of topics that we kind of speculate about from the outside, and we actually got an actual inside look at what they think about the actual situation that affected them rather than the media narrative. So especially when it came down to them talking about KD actually leaving the Warriors, which was a huge moment. Everybody remembers the Clipper game. Everybody remembers the fight on the argument on the bench, and how we thought from the outside that precipitated KD leaving because we thought that he was angry with Draymond and that relationship had fractured and that caused him to leave. But,
Right.
it was really shocking to hear from both of them that that wasn't the case, that it was the organization that was
Right.
responsible for the lack of accountability and the lack of openness when it came to actually resolving the situation. So I think that it's really interesting because we live in an age now where athletes have the power to help tell their own stories. LeBron is really great at constructing his narrative. So I think 15, 20 years ago, the media story would have been that it would have been that would have been it. It would have been just what the media thought about the situation. Draymond stepped out of line. He was the one that caused KD to leave. But now we actually have a story where we can see that the players get to tell their side of it. And maybe the organization could have done a little bit more to facilitate their relationship and actually bring the team together and talk about it in a way that would have been more constructive rather than how it actually went. And they kind of portrayed it as a team ignoring the problem. So what did you think
Yeah.
about them talking about KD leaving the Warriors and how that went down?
I thought first of all, his reason to join the Warriors in the first place was quite fascinating because it seemed like it was purely a basketball best fit decision in his mind, and everything else was tertiary or way down the list of importance. He didn't care what anyone else thought. He just said to himself, I want to be in the best position to win and play a style and brand of basketball that I think fits my skills and qualities the best. And that was really clearly the Warriors, and it made perfect sense. I think about him even like, let's say he joined the Cavs, right? That would have been a weird fit. Let's say, I think about other teams that were available in free agency, him re-signing with Oklahoma City. That would have been more of the same thing. They might have even gotten beat by a Houston Rockets team the next year or something like that, because that Houston Rockets team with Chris Paul was really formidable. And so I think about all the different options that KD had and, finally just choosing the Warriors and him saying, be damned everything else. I want to just go where I have the biggest likelihood to win a championship. And so when
but also
he
to
left,
grow his game, I think that was the biggest thing he also highlighted.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right about that. And I'd be remiss to not mention him saying that and how that fit in the theme with him understanding where his game was, let's say in high school, and just all the different jumps that he made to different high schools to grow his game in different ways and not just be pigeonholed into one particular role. And I think also the evolution of his game as he was in Golden State was fascinating as well, because you saw him more as a two-way player and you saw him really lock in and embrace the role that he had, not just as a primary bucket getter, but also as a defensive stopper. That was really cool to see. So then him leaving, it made you wonder the same thing. Like, what exactly do you want? Do you want to I guess you want to grow your game even more, see what you look like when maybe you're the primary guy and always a primary guy. And I guess overall, maybe it seems to me as though he didn't have the kind of relationship with the Steve Kerr that he ideally wanted. He was a fit in conceptually and scheme wise, but I don't know if he was necessarily a fit culture wise with what the Warriors were doing and the image that they had. And so that is where I don't know if they really got into all the dirty reasons that he left. How about you?
Yeah, I think that there's more that happened that isn't necessarily being said. I think David West had said it during an interview. He said that basically that if the public had any idea what went on during that final year, they would be shocked. So it sounds like there's a lot more that was happening outside of Draymond and KD. I think that there was a lot more chemistry issues that haven't quite come to light. But yeah, it's really interesting, KD's career and the choices that he's made, because I think a lot of us, once we saw that he might have been leaving OKC, like we were just like anywhere but there as fans. So when he did make that decision, it was just like, oh man. And I think it's great for him and his game and great for Warriors fans, but I think as basketball fans, I don't necessarily feel this way now, but I think at the time we were just like, bro, like it's a wrap. Like we know who's winning every year for the next however long they want to be together. So it was just like it was a little frustrating as a fan because it did kind of take the drama out of it a little bit
Yeah.
because they were so good. And then also I think that Cleveland Golden State rivalry prior to KD had kind of been set up where the Warriors had beat the Cavs in 2015 where Kevin Love and Kyrie were out, and that was like one of LeBron's best finals. But he wasn't enough to beat that Warriors team because they were so good. And then you had the next year with the 73-9 team, and the Draymond suspension and all the drama. One of the best game sevens we've seen. Some heroic performances from Kyrie and from Bron, and the block and all that stuff. And I kind of feel like it was setting up for like, all right, what's round 3 gonna look like between these teams if they both make it to the finals? And it was just like we saw what round 3 looked like and round 4. Like it wasn't pretty. So all we got out of that was the LeBron JR meme. That's all we got out of 2017 and 2018.
Oh man.
But yeah, I think a lot of us just kind of realized that, like, because of how good he was and because of how good that Warriors team was, like it was shut down. So I think a lot of us were just frustrated with that. But we overreacted as a fan base, not necessarily me, but with all the snake stuff and the questioning his manhood, when we realize now that it was just a basketball decision. And when you look at KD and you look at the way he operates and the way that he dresses and the way that he conducts himself, like that dude cares about one thing, and it's hooping. Like that's it. So he's the one guy that if he did say that was a basketball decision, that I believe him, because that's really what's important to him. Like he don't even care about like combing his hair all the way. Like he just cares about basketball. That's it. Waves be damned. Like he just cares about hooping.